Welcome to the show, guys. Hey there, business owners, directors, and marketeers. In today's show, I'm meeting Bobby Martins. I'm Lucas, your host as always, and I want to tell you a little bit about Bobby before we're starting into the questions. So he is a co-founder and CEO of Vertical IQ, which is a leading provider of industry research insights, specifically for banks, CPAs, consultants, and advisors. And Bobby's going to tell us all about this today. So he is also an active angel investor in startups and serves as an active board member with several innovative startups as well. So he has sort of a lot of insight from that side as well. Plus, if that wouldn't be enough, he is also an author of the Hockey Stick Principles about 4 stages to entrepreneurial success. So, Bobby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lucas. Great to be here.
Very, very cool. So tell us about Vertical IQ. What is it all about?
Sure. Vertical IQ is a company that provides industry research right at your fingertips. And it uses software to support that. So I guess you could call us information as a service. So it's information and software as a service. We have 35,000 people using it, so it's a lot, but from only about 250 companies, because some of our companies that use Vertical IQ are larger companies. So the reason they would need, you might be wondering, why would people need industry research? So many people. They primarily use Vertical IQ for pre-meeting preparation. So if I'm a banker or a CPA or anyone advising small businesses, and I'm going to meet with a dry cleaner, and then I'm going to go meet with a gasoline station all on the same day, then I can quickly and easily pull up the industry research that I need to be knowledgeable when I'm meeting with that business owner, because the dry cleaner cares about dry cleaning. And if the person meeting with him or her doesn't know a whole lot about dry cleaning, they're in the dark. And we provide the content in an easy to absorb fashion.
Very, very interesting. Any other use cases that you could describe? Because I think this example makes it really clear already. A couple of others that you could mention. You have the bank example there, speaking to different, I guess, business clients, and have to be prepared. Any other use cases that you would have?
Sure, there are lots of use cases. Another use case would be if it's a banking situation. Let's say they have their financial statements and they're being helpful as an advisor and comparing the particular business, say it's a dry cleaner, any type of business, with the industry as a whole. So the banker could come in and say, here are your financial statistics and your profit margins. Here's the industry as a whole. Gotcha. Or here's the amount of money you're borrowing in general, and here's how much your competitors are borrowing. That's just one. Or let's say that an advisor meets with a small business owner and they have a really good discussion. And then afterwards they go to Vertical IQ and pull industry news articles from the Wall Street Journal or something like that. They take the article and send it to the business owner and say, hey, I saw this about dry cleaning. I saw this about gasoline stations. So those are just a couple of use cases, but there's certainly dozens of them. But the main thing is being knowledgeable, taking 5 or 10 minutes to read bullet points, and then walking into a meeting and knowing your stuff. That's a big part of it.
Very, very interesting. So should we imagine that to be sort of reports that people are pulling up, or is that sort of consolidated data across different verticals? Like what does the user see when they open up your interface?
Yeah, great question. We have, when they open it up, the interface, the tool, it's very simple. It says, find your industry. And so a lot of people just search the industry. We have more than 500 industries. So if it's, say, funeral homes or death care, they type it in and it comes up immediately. They click on it and there's the plethora of content. The neat thing is that the content is, say if I printed all the content on one of those 500 industries, it would be 35, 40 pages of content. However, we've organized it in a way that's simple and easy to digest. So they say, I want to know the trends, industry trends. They click on trends, they come up. Or I want call prep questions, those come up, or financial statistics, or whatever it may be. So it's very organized and easy to digest. There's also multiple tools on the site, so you can quickly and easily sort the industries based on all these different metrics. Or we have a mobile app, and so if somebody just wants to pull all this information up right on their phone, they can do that as well.
Very, very interesting. You mentioned you're working with some 200 plus companies. I think you mentioned there at the very beginning. What would
Yeah.
be a typical user journey of somebody within those companies to find you, to get to know about Vertical IQ and getting started? Maybe a typical journey, because I'm assuming there must be sort of type of champions within those companies that bring in a tool like yours. What would the journey be looking like?
Yeah, so people hear about vertical IQ multiple ways, but one of the main ways is word of mouth.
Hmm.
They will hear about it from a friend and say, "Hey, I've got this tool that gives me an edge." And then they go check it out online, which is verticaliq.com, and they can sign up right there. However, if you look at really large organizations, large banks or large insurance companies, large CPA firms, they will roll it out to all their people on a wholesale basis.
Yep.
So they'll send an email out literally to all the few thousand people, and they say, you now have access to Vertical IQ. Click here to get busy with it, and here's how you use it. But it's very user friendly. I mean, somebody can go right on. And the other thing about Vertical IQ I should mention is we have a freemium version.
Okay.
So if you go to verticaliq.com, you can sign up as a free user and get access to some of our content for free. And that's very popular. And that's not even included in the 35,000. Those are 35,000 of paid users, but freemium's a large subset as well.
Very, very cool. You mentioned the website there a couple of times. Like, what role would the website be playing in the overall mix of, finding and getting new customers?
Yeah, the great point. So the website has lots of interesting information on it. We have a blog. We have lots of information about how the product can be useful, all the things you could typically see. We're also pretty active on LinkedIn and that type of thing.
Hmm.
The freemium, though, I would say is the main draw of the website. And we want to keep it real simple and easy to use so that people get there and know what to do. And so that's what draws the most people. However, we recently hired a guy named David Buffalo, who is our new chief marketing officer.
Hmm.
And so David is doing a great job of taking our marketing to another level.
Very, very interesting, because I saw on the website you can request a demo or you can get started for free. I had that conversation with a lot of SaaS and software founders. Like, how do you look at those two different flows of going through a demo or starting a trial? Like, what do you look at with those two things?
Yeah. Actually, that's a really good question. And I think one of the things David will do as chief marketing officer is make us even more intuitive and clear over somebody comes to our website, how do they know exactly what they're supposed to do, which is
Hmm.
your big part of your question. Is it a natural path for me to sign up for freemium, or should I sign up for a demo? Um, we don't want to confuse people, and maybe we are now. However, I will say a demonstration is more likely if you're providing vertical IQ to multiple people within
Yep.
your organization. So if you're head of sales operations or VP of marketing, you're likely to take a demonstration because you're trying to solve a problem that's bigger. But if you're just a casual user who's heard about vertical IQ, then you're likely to use the freemium. And so
Makes total.
that's kind of, you know, that's how people are intuitively supposed to know what to do. It's a
That
good
makes total
question.
sense. I mean, it's interesting because a lot of companies we've been talking to, it was the same situation. Like, you have sort of, bigger accounts coming to the page and you sort of want to qualify them and they come through the demo, while others start a trial because they're individual users. So it's not an uncommon challenge that you have
Right.
there. Very, very interesting.
That's right. We could improve, that's for sure. We could probably use Path Monk, up our game.
Very good. So what would be metrics that you would care about on your website then? Is that something that you would be looking at to sort of steer and drive the business?
Yeah, so we're getting better at that. I mean, we certainly look at all the typical metrics in terms of number of individual users that visit the site, their activity on the site, what they're doing on the site. You might have heard of Pendo, a company that enables you to sort of see the activity and the pathway, if you will, of what people are doing.
Yep.
So we subscribe to Pendo, which provides a lot of those metrics and also helps educate people as they're using particularly our tool, their paid use of the tool. We certainly look at conversion rates. For example, the percentage of freemium that become subscribers, the percentage of freemium who use it frequently versus casually, and metrics like that. But to tell you the truth, Vertical IQ has always been, in my predecessor company's First Research, a company before that just sold to Dun& Bradstreet.
Mm-hmm.
The average subscription is about, in the range of $15,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
So we've always been a sales-centric company. In other words, we have enterprise salespeople, and we make most of our revenue from sales. However, we're becoming better and better, or more and more active with digital sales, digital marketing, and that kind of thing. And it's a place we really need to improve a lot. And I think David's going to help us a lot as our chief marketing officer on becoming more of a digital type company. But in the past, we've been really good at selling as opposed to digitally marketing.
Very, very interesting. Especially very interesting that you're sort of steering that move now. It sounds towards like an inbound strategy next to the sales strategy. Very, very interesting. Very cool. Yeah, I would like to switch gears a little bit and learn a little bit about you as a business founder and business owner. Maybe you could tell me if you remember back those first 10 customers. How did you get them? How did you convince those people initially to use a tool like yours? And what was your way of winning those first 10?
Yeah, sure. And so I should preface that particular answer with, I started, which I mentioned, First Research in 1999. And then I started Vertical IQ in 2011. They're somewhat similar businesses. They're both industry research companies. But the more interesting story is the First Research one, because there was no market for what I was doing. It was a brand new idea, which is, the average person needs industry research right at their fingertips for an affordable price. And that was my idea. And to get the first 10 customers was slow going. And I had to get the first 10 customers myself, very, very manual. So, and when I say manual, I mean begging people to pay me $600 or $700 to access our entire database, which was, right now we have more than 500 industries. Back then we had like 30 industries, and that was it. So it was hit and miss on whether we covered the industries they were interested in the first place. And but we had very low cost structure. I mean, I was spending a couple of grand a month, if that. And so I was very fortunate from that vantage point. I didn't have a big nut to cover. But to tell you how I got those customers, I knocked on a ton of doors. It was the entrepreneurial grind. As I say in my book, the hockey stick principles, those 4 stages. The stage I was in is called the blade years, which is when revenue's low and growth is low. And it was 3 years of slogging. But we finally, when we hit what I call the growth inflection point, people started calling us. I was like, wow, our sales cycle went from 1 year to 3 months or 2 months.
What do you think changed? What do you think was changing? Was it just that you sort of got the word out more, or did you just have your communication more on point? Like, what do you think was key drivers for that change that you were describing?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. I think that, I did think the way I was getting the first 10 customers was really manual, but the way I did that is selling more than the product itself. So I would sell myself, for example. I would say, if you sign up for Vertical IQ, and I'm sorry, First Research at that time, then I will be your inside sales trainer. I will teach your people personally how to become great at pre-call preparation. And I see this all the time for those first few customers, on getting them by selling not only the product, but also the founder, him or herself, giving free something, consulting, if you will, to the businesses. But then what changed with your question? Why did people all of a sudden start calling you? It's because the vision, after 2 or 3 years, finally started actually crystallizing, where people started, I had to cram it down their throats to get them to use it. But then when they used it, it worked. And I think that because it worked, people started gravitating towards it and telling other people. So I think that's what happened, is that people started using the doggone thing in any scale. I mean, it's like you've only have 100 people using it. you don't have enough scale to get people calling you. But when you get a couple thousand using a product, then it starts spreading virally more, even with marketing and stuff like that.
And do you remember that one switch that you did in order to get maybe the next 100 from that first 10? Like, how did you do that? Did you completely change strategy? Did you hire guys? What did you automate steps? What was the sort of key change to get to the next 100?
Yeah, I do think that one of the keys was hiring a guy named Will Brawley, and it's actually my book, but he is a really good salesman. So if I was worried about other things in the business, which I was with half my time, Will Brawley, every day he woke up, he said, how can I get somebody to buy this product? And he was outstanding. And I was fortunate because I was only 30 years old at the time. I'm 50 now. And so I could afford Will. I could afford him, and he was really good. So I gave him 10% of the company, convinced him to come on board and take a risk. He did, and he was outstanding. And that's what got us from 10 to 100. And then just kept hiring that process. And we didn't hire a VP of marketing until we were at about 3 million, 2.5, 3 million. But when we did, he really was influential to get us from 3 million to 10 million. So, I mean, 0 to 3 million was like 3 or 4 years. And then 3 million to 10 million was like 2 years or something. And that's where marketing came in. We just did it a little later. And the reason we did it a little bit later was because our sales price was high enough that we sort of sell our way to 3 million.
Makes a lot of sense.
Vertical IQ.
Very
IQ is at roughly 3 million too.
Yep.
And we just hired a CMO. And sure enough, he's already doing a tremendous job. Same guy, actually. Same guy from First Research.
Seems to be one of your sort of secret sauces to work with really good people and keep them close. So that's
absolutely. I've been very, very lucky.
Very cool. I would be curious, how do you learn yourself about sort of improving as a CEO, improving as a founder? Like, I know you've written a book, but is there also sort of like books, resources, podcasts, maybe things that you educate yourself with in order to grow?
Yeah, I love talking to successful founders. And that's one of the things I was fortunate to do with writing my book is like I spent a lot of time with Doug Lebba, who started Lending Tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so learning from them the various stages of how they change, because I think the hardest thing for a founder of a SaaS company, it's like, okay, 0 to 100,000 takes a set of skills. 100,000 to 1 million takes a different set of skills. And then 1 million to 10 million takes a totally different set of skills, and et cetera, just keeps going. Mm-hmm. The most successful founders are able to change with each one of those stages. And it's like, you give up control, and that's what it is. But you don't give up so much control that you lose control of the business and lose your vision. So there's a happy medium there. But to answer your question, I love learning. And so I'm constantly scanning various articles I see on the internet. Mm-hmm. But the biggest way I've learned is talking to really smart founders. And as an angel investor, I've done 9 different deals. And so I've seen a lot, and being 50 has helped.
Really?
I've been doing it for 20 years.
Really good. Very cool. Very insightful. So maybe I would slowly wrap up the interview for today and ask you one last question, which would be, which advice would you give yourself if you would go back to the days of starting Vertical IQ, maybe even of the company before? I will leave that choice to you. Back to those days, what advice would you give yourself to do things, maybe different, or just keep on doing then the same thing? What would be one advice?
Yeah, I would say I'll go with Vertical IQ. Mm-hmm. I would say that become better at marketing earlier would be I was like, just then I was like, okay, went from 0 to 3 million without a CMO, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Just I was doing the marketing, and I'm really not qualified. I'm not as proficient. If I could do it all over again, I would have figured out a way to spend more money on marketing and invest more into marketing than I did. So I was spending money on marketing, but not enough, because I've learned that while my bias and my background is sales is important, so is marketing. And so I think we would be way ahead And I think it's the same story with First Research. I should have, at 2 million or a million, hired a VP of marketing because it makes a big difference. Inbound is way better than outbound. All right. Like I'm
Yep.
sure Pathmark would agree with that. And
Yep.
so that would be my advice, is to try to be better at marketing earlier.
Very, very cool. Thanks a lot, Bobby, for sort of like showing us a little bit about your two companies actually that we talked about today, how you've been able to grow them, how you've been sort of bringing up marketing after you've been building up the sales power in the business, and also how you as a founder have been growing. So thanks a lot for being part of the show today.
Thank you, Lucas. Enjoyed it.
Very cool.